Catholics around the world are being urged to pray for the former Pope Benedict. His worsening health was first flagged by his successor, Pope Francis, with doctors closely monitoring the 95-year-old who became the first Roman Catholic leader for almost 600 years to resign due to his advanced age in 2013. Dr. Miles Pattenden is an expert on the papacy and its history at the Australian Catholic University and joins us now. Good morning to you. Thanks for finding the time to come in.
Good morning.
What is former Pope Benedict's current status?
Well, the only thing we know at the moment is what's been released by the Vatican. So overnight here in Australia, they released a statement which said that he's still in a serious but stable condition, but that he's lucid and able to talk. So I think all that Catholics can do now is watch and wait and pray.
And this is a really rather unprecedented situation, isn't it? We haven't been in this situation with a retired Pope in this circumstance before.
No, that's right. This is a new situation. People always say that he's the first Pope to have resigned for 600 years and look back to medieval precedents, but those medieval precedents don't have a precedent for what happens when a retired Pope dies in the Vatican, partly because even in the Middle Ages those resignations were unusual and politically turbulent. So we don't know what will happen now. We imagine that there has been some planning, but there's been no kind of official word on that, and we don't know of the existence of anything equivalent to, say, Operation London Bridge, which we had for the late Queen Elizabeth. So we just have to wait and listen to see what the Vatican says and does.
But surely something is planned if things don't go well. I mean, we do know what happens when a pope passes. There's entire ceremonial plans, smoke and
the
things like that.
And
Would something similar happen?
Obviously this time there'll be no conclave, so there'll also be no smoke. But there will be a papal funeral of some description. And traditionally there were 9 days of mourning after the Pope's death, involving 3 days in which the Pope would lie in state in St. Peter's Basilica. And then there'd be a big funeral in which world leaders would be invited. That funeral will probably still take place, but we can't be certain about any of the other arrangements. I would imagine that Pope Francis will take charge of this personally, because it would be sending out a certain kind of message about his relationship with Benedict were he not to do that. But again, we have to wait and see what he says about that.
And we would assume that all of the cardinals from around the world would also come to the funeral. This would be a massive event for the church hierarchy.
Yes, you'd imagine all the cardinals would be there, and also representatives of most governments from around the world.
What does this mean for Catholics? Because he's Pope Benedict, former Pope Benedict, Pope Emeritus, is not the Pope, but he obviously means still quite a lot. What does this all mean for Catholics right now?
Well, I think for many Catholics it means a very great deal, and you see that from the outpourings of grief and affection for Benedict, which are all around the world at the moment. And Benedict was a rather unusual Pope for the 20th or 21st centuries, in that he was also a very significant theologian and writer and teacher in his own right before becoming Pope. And there are dozens of stories of people who've come out on media in the last few days and said things like, well, I converted because of his example or because I read his books. And so on. So he has a resonance with a certain group of Catholics which is very, very strong, even as his legacy with other people and non-Catholics is perhaps more mixed.
Has he been writing or doing anything in retirement since retiring officially, or was he still active in some way?
He was still very active as a writer and as a teacher, I think, right up until this moment, and there may be more works to come. So.
And obviously the relationship as well is something that we are going to be looking at in the days ahead between the Pope and the former Pope too.
Yes, overall they seem to have maintained a good relationship. I mean, it's been an unprecedented situation and very difficult, so there were bound to be some frictions and teething troubles. There have been moments where people have implied that one has criticised the other, but I think overall they've done very well, certainly compared with many presidents and former presidents in some other nations. So
a much better relationship. Well, Dr. Miles Pattenden, thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Thank you.